Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are back again at Rejuvenate Edition 2. We would like to welcome Mr. Ramachandran Muniandy, who is the CEO and co-founder of Asia Mobility. Thank you for joining us today, Ram.
Thank you, Andrew, for having me. Thank you very much.
So we are here today to talk about technopreneurship, which is an emerging field in entrepreneurship, and it's something obviously that is close to your heart. For our viewers out there who are perhaps not so familiar with the Malaysia landscape. Now, Ram is the co-founder and CEO, as I've mentioned, of Asia Mobility, which is a mobility tech startup with the mission to improve transportation and mobility in Southeast Asia. So very big ambitions there. Of course, we will go into details as to how it all started and whatnot. And perhaps I guess, without me wasting more time, Ram, take it over.
Sure. Thank you, Andrew. Just a bit of a background for me and the company. And as if you heard from Andrew, I co-founded this pioneering startup called Asia Mobility. You're right, Andrew. That's a big area and a grand sort of a mission and ambition there. It's locked up in our name, right? We're a very much Malaysian-founded, Malaysian-based startup, but really we're building in Malaysia so that we can scale to the rest of Asia with the technology. We are a mobility tech startup, one of the very few really focused on being able to build a platform to help people move about their cities in a better way, in a smarter way, in a more cost-efficient way. And so think of a platform of mobility specific and mobility centric solutions where we are able to bring together multimodal movement and multimodal transportation services, right? So that you don't have to choose, do I drive or do I take public transport or do I take ride hailing or something else, right? That is the choices that we make today. It's an either or, right? Do I drive or do I take public transport? But in a smart city, in a sustainable city, the best mode of transport has been proven in the developed world, obviously, where the best way to move about your city is multimodal, right? Whereby you are able to use and combine many different modes of transport in a single journey to get from point A to point B, right? And that's where the difference comes between first mile and last mile, right? And if we find yourself using a single mode of transport to get from point A to point B, that is very likely not the best way to move about your city. Driving is one example where I drive all the way, and we are very familiar with that. We are a very high, vehicle ownership nation. And we're all very familiar with, look, the easiest way for me to get from point A to point B, wherever I need to go, is drive all the way. But driving is usually the most expensive mode of transport because there's fuel, there's toll, there's parking.
Yes.
And also it's not the best way if you're stuck in traffic, right? It may be the most comfortable way, but it's sometimes can be the one of the most least efficient way to get to a spot in the city, right? And so if you look at most of the developed world and the developed cities is where you've got very efficient public transport systems that will complement driving. So it's not in competition, so our aim is to be able to use technology and data to help people move about their cities in a smarter way, being able to level the playing field for all other mobility service providers, and being able to provide all of that information in a very seamless, unified digital interface to passengers. So you don't need to have 10 different apps. 3 of it is ride hailing, 2 is car sharing, 1 is an e-scooter app, and another 2 is for driving. You have all of that as a mobility service available to you in a single unified interface. So that is, as a whole, would define what we are doing as far as building a mobility platform is concerned. And that is obviously something that is ahead of the curve, right? But we feel that we have got the opportunity to do that for Malaysia, to help our nation and the rest of Southeast Asia first to leapfrog. We are, as a nation, we struggle a lot with transportation. We don't feel that now in a pandemic because we are all restricted from moving. But think back
Yes.
as to a pre-pandemic era, we are, constantly trying to navigate traffic, constantly trying to plan our lives around traffic, spend a lot of our time in traffic. And for those who need to take public transport are well aware of the inefficiencies of that, are well aware of the fact
Mm-hmm.
that one of a very unreliable mode of transport.
Mm-hmm.
The bus could be broken down, or the train could be delayed, and I have no idea until I arrive at the terminal, and then I need to make plans to shift modes of transport, right? So there is a lack of data to inform passengers, and so it's actually a technology problem. It's not so much about can we have better drivers for the buses or can we have better buses. No, it's using technology and data to solve all of that connectivity problems as far as as far as the passenger is concerned, and that's not going to go away post pandemic, right? Once things recover again, I just heard a saying recently, physical is not going to go away, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not suddenly we are all going to live online forever. Physical is not going to go away, and
Yes.
similarly with the needs for people to move about, it's not going to go away unless we are able to teleport, and that's not going to happen in our lifetime. uh, and so the need to move about our cities, the need to move about even cross border will always be there. The airlines are going to come back, flights are going to come back, and then you need to move about to get from your house to the airport, right? And so we are basically so we have now decided to build this back in late 2018 when me and Premesh, my co-founder, um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, saw this as an opportunity and saw this as a great space where we can bring together our expertise and our know-how and our passion really in order
Mm-hmm.
to make our cities better, to rebuild our cities in our own way, right? In To build this, but we are something that, so we see that as the future of mobility, being able to help people make the right choices before you leave your house, and plan your journey across so that your time is put to good use. And we see this as a great way of making our cities smarter.
So having said that, Ram, I guess in the early days of you trying to get this going, was there I guess as a case study or a country that you looked into to try to replicate this, or rather, I guess let me rephrase the question: where else in the world are we looking at the best in doing what you are doing right now in Malaysia?
Yeah, we would look at the we would look at the first world countries, places like in Europe, actually even North America, struggle with this a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow things have not worked out for them in a way where their public transport systems are the best in the world. Actually, they're not. But if you look at Europe, if you look at Japan, so
Mm-hmm.
if you look at East Asia, and you look at Europe, that's where the model countries are. Let's take London, for example. You take Paris, for example, right? They've got very efficient public transport systems, and it's very much a digital experience now. In fact, if you look at Paris, you don't realize it's the same buses, same drivers, but their public bus system is now on demand. A lot of their public bus services are on demand, which means you'll be able to book a seat on a bus using an app. It's a very similar ride-hailing experience, and so they have actually embraced digital transformation in a big way, and that is benefiting the city and benefiting the passengers. So we use those countries and those cities as a benchmark reference point. Another reference point that may not be very familiar is Helsinki.
Mm.
Whole concept of mobility as a service, MaaS, mass. That's what we are actually. We are the first Malaysian mass company where we are providing the technology to enable mobility as a service, right? So think of it this way: this, like software as a service, SaaS. This is mass, mobility as a,
Correct.
whereby you pay a subscription to all forms of all forms of transportation in a city.
Mm-hmm.
The Netflix model, right? Rather than buying a ticket to one movie, I subscribe
Mm-hmm.
to get all the movies. Uh,
Mm.
now, when you choose to move about, it's you have to buy a ticket for a ride. You have to buy a ticket for that bus or this train, or
Mm-hmm.
ultimately it will all converge into a service. It's mobility as a service. I don't care which bus, I don't care who runs the bus, I don't care what mode of transport, what's the best way to get me from where I am to where I need to go at this time, work it out for me, and I pay seamlessly handle all of the ticketing for me, right? That's really the movement towards mobility as a service. We are obviously as a country a few steps, many steps away from that.
Mm-hmm.
But this model, actually, this whole concept of mass came about by a female engineer in Helsinki who came
Ah,
up with this concept, and they trialed it, and it's gone live. And that is where it all picked up. That's the gold standard. If you want to see the gold standard of mobility as a service, go to Helsinki. It's live now. There's an app called WIM, WHIM, and that's
WHIM.
yeah, and that's the premier
Okay.
mobility as a service app there. Thousands of Finnish people have sold off their cars and simply sign up for a WIM subscription, and that
Mm,
subscription gives them unlimited number of rides on buses, on trains, on ride-hailing rides, car sharing trips, bicycle shares, all of that, right? And so it has worked there with their infrastructure, obviously. But it's a very European-centric model, right? For us to do that here, we need to solve a lot more underlying problems. You can't just immediately just build an app and do this. An app
mm,
is
mm.
solving the problem here. You need to be able to get to the data layer. So we are using that as a reference point. We see that that's the future. And we are playing our part in order to bring our country along and bring this part of the world along on that journey.
If I may just summarize it a little bit in a very layman term, it's almost like trying to aggregate all the transportation service together. In a way, when you say one source of payment, technically in Malaysia we would probably already have it in the sense of touch and go, for example, right? So it's just pulling together data from all the trains, the cars, the ride hailing. There are lots of scooter rentals as well out there in the KL city center. That's what you're literally saying. That's what the WIMP model is, correct?
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. You have hit the nail on the head, Andrew. That is what
Okay.
it will be. The seamless payment, meaning I don't have to figure out which card to use or how much it's going to cost me. I link it to an e-wallet, I tap it, and then you give me best pricing. So the
Mm,
great thing with Touch and Go is that fantastic. We've got a smart card payment system here that's used for toll, parking, and also public transit, but not all public transit. If you go to the
mhm.
towns, the smaller buses, they don't accept touch and go.
Yeah,
So there is a gap there, but still we have got a mainstay card, which is fantastic. And so we basically partner with Touch and Go as well. We've got
mhm,
some things in the pipeline with them. And so ultimately, you want to be able to say, look, if I'm a frequent user, don't charge me per trip, charge me best pricing, reward me
mm,
for using more public transport, right?
yeah,
Uh, and so to do that as well, surge pricing, the whole concept of surge pricing with ride hailing, right? Can we, reward people to use more public transport? So if you are a daily user and you are, tapping in, multiple times in a day, you're not paying
mm,
the same flat rate as the rest of the people,
exactly. Yes,
right? So you can only do that once you can connect your smart card, your token that you're tapping on with an
yes,
e, for example, right? So charge me in the back end. Don't charge me on my card. So
yeah,
that so those. But that's been done elsewhere in the world already. It's
yeah.
being pioneered in North America. It's being pioneered in Europe, in East Asia. Very few sort of investments in that space here, but we are one of the few. As a startup, we are making our own investments into this space, building the technology and building the capabilities for that.
And fantastic. But now that you have mentioned about building, right? Just want to get an idea. How big of a team are you running at Asia Mobility?
We are a 2.5-year-old startup, and we are at a team of 20 now. Still fairly small, relatively very small for what we are building, the extent of what we are building. And But we do expect to grow the team significantly over the next year, and to double the size of the team in the next 12 months. That is our aim. We see that that is necessary. So yeah, we were started in early 2019, the
Mhm.
full stack operations in early 2019 with a team of 5, right? And it grew over time. Of course, we have taken very measured, relatively slow growth, but we had a big problem to solve, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we had to really, almost like basically you've got this big boulder and you're trying to chip away a little bit each time, right? I'm not going to throw 100 people at the problem yet. So we've got to slowly build in-house capabilities, and so we started small, and taken a somewhat conservative approach to fundraising, a somewhat conservative approach to growth and scale as well. Because as you know, it's a market that we are actually creating here. There isn't a
Mm.
market yet, we are creating
Correct.
the right? So we are first movers.
First
Uh,
movers, yeah.
yeah. So the challenge of a first mover is that very few people would fund you if you're the first mover because it's unvalidated, it's unproven, right? So we had to navigate, work around that challenge. But thankfully, we have been managed. I mean, we have managed to secure some very key strategic investors along the way, and now the market is moving in that direction. So it's great. So
Mm.
it's about building momentum, right? We have
That's
not
right.
hopped on a bandwagon. If you hop on a bandwagon, then you need to scale very quickly because the cart
True.
is moving already, right? We have to create a cart. We have to create the bandwagon.
Yeah.
And so that's the challenge. We are first movers. The challenge of a first mover is that will you also be the market leader?
Mm.
That is not guaranteed, right? And so that is where we are at. It's the time now where we need to scale. We need to grow quickly.
So as we were talking, there are a couple of questions that came in already, and if you don't mind, we'll jump into that before we move to the next segment. Now, Billy is asking, or rather, perhaps making a point here. If public transport infra is not good, what is the point? I suppose he means what's the point of mass?
Yeah.
Would you like to?
Yeah, that's a very common question from people who don't take public transport, right? For we have to keep in mind that public transport, there are users for it.
Mm.
We would like more users, obviously. If you look at our trains and it's packed in peak
Yeah.
hours. There are users who depend, whose livelihoods would depend on public transport. It's not a
Yes.
nice to have; it's a must-have for them, right? But also the fact that we can definitely up the ridership so that we can move a lot more people from the roads onto the public transport systems, right? So that you don't need to drive anymore, and that's going to help our cities. One of the key complaints as to why people don't use a lot more public transport in their daily travel is the fact that this infra issue. So let's talk about the infra issue. Um, that is that is very likely a bus related problem, not
Mm-hmm.
so much about our trains, because our stations are fairly good. The
Mm-hmm.
trains are fairly good. It's not like the trains are falling off the tracks, right? So the infra for railways, actually, we have made a lot of investments in that. The LRTs, the MRT, the ERLs,
Yes.
the rails could be done better, but
Mm-hmm.
I know that is sort of like a legacy, sort of an experiment, the monorails.
Mm-hmm.
And the KTMB trains as well are fairly good for long distance travels. And so the infra for that, so we have to be clear what sort of infra. Is it a data infra or the hardware infra or the vehicle infra? I think the vehicle infra and the station infra is fairly good. Of course, it could be better in terms of walkways to the stations, for example, right?
Mm.
This is where you talk about, okay, how do you justify building walkways when no one's using it, right? So it's
Mm.
almost a chicken and egg thing, right? So we studied the market and we understand the problem, and from a policy point of view as well, I have a good appreciation of that, right? Where the problems lie, whose jurisdiction. So we have got to navigate all of that, and it's not the same for every country. So for Malaysia, obviously, it's a very much which came first. If you want me to build a walkway, can you please justify who is going to use it? Because then you can say it's a white elephant. You build a walkway, no one is using it, and we have seen that
Yes.
enough in Malaysia, right? So many white elephant projects, and so we can't blame the government for saying, "Oh, you didn't build a walkway, and therefore I'm not using it." The government is going to turn around,
Mm.
"You're not using it, therefore I'm not building the walkway," right?
Yes.
So hence, we need to solve what we can solve, right? So rather than saying, look, let's just build walkways everywhere and hopefully people use it, we need to be data driven in order to justify the building of the infra, right?
Correct.
And so where is the data coming from? The data needs to come from the use of technology. And that's where we want to use that technology in order to drive the decision making in these spaces. So we feel that that is the solution. If you can help people plan their journeys better, some people are going to benefit. Not everybody, obviously, is going to suddenly want to use a bus or a train, right? But there will be more people. There'll be more people who will want to be able to say, look, I think I can use this for this travel on this particular day. It's going to work for me because I've got enough data to plan my journey for that. If I've got the capability in order to plan my journey, which says drive and park here, and then you can transfer and take a train, and
Yes.
the train ride will take you 6 minutes. Based on the frequency of the train, we have got real-time data. I can tell you exactly where the train is. I can tell you your waiting time on the platform, right? You are going to wait about 3 minutes on the platform before the next train arrives, and therefore I can give you a reliable ETA as to your final destination. If you have that experience, that is only made possible not because of infra, that is made possible because of data.
Yeah.
Right? So once you've got the data in place, and I can then channel this data and provide this data to the user, the end user, now I will have a higher chance of convincing that end user, look, don't drive all the way, drive a little bit, park here, and then transfer. Because you know why? When you do that, you have got a shorter travel time, it's going to cost you
Mm.
less, and you'll be able to sit in a train and get work done, right? More and more people are going to be convinced to do that, right? And
Yes.
then once you have that, once you have the volume growing, once you have the demand growing, the ridership picks up. That is when you're going to get the authorities who needs to build the infra and improve the infra following suit.
Correct.
Right? So they're going to say, okay, great, more people are using it. I'm going to put more money towards this. The politicians are going to say, fantastic, my voters are using it. They want the walkway. I'm going to set aside a walkway to build that, right? So that is how it works, actually, right? You need to be able to ensure that we harness the power of demand in order to
Hmm.
ensure that the supply catches up.
Yeah. I mean, you illustrated that very well, Ram. And in fact, in the midst of you explaining that, you have actually answered the second question that we had in the chat box. It was actually from Julia, and I hope Julia caught all of that. But in any case, I'm just going to repeat the question. Many people choose not to use the public transport since it takes a long time to arrive to their destination. Now, how can this issue be solved by using smart technology? So I think it's your turn to then hit the nail in the head, by
Yeah.
by giving that very thorough explanation. Fantastic. Now Ram, of course, Rejuvenate, it's all about the youth, and we are here to celebrate and champion youth causes in that sense. And I love that you have got this partnership going with Monash University. It's a joint research and development partnership. Now, walk us through a little bit what it is, and how did it come about, and where it is at this current juncture.
Yeah, I would be more than happy to. We are, very proud of that, partnership with, Monash University, Malaysia. And it came about really from my team members, my staff, the core team members who were Monash graduates, Monash alumni. And so they were great students, and now they're working for me. And so when we were piloting our very first telematics IoT device, and we wanted to test it out in a real world scenario, and that was one of my engineers who was part of the Shell Eco Marathon race, part of the Monash team, and he was a student there, and
Mm.
they did well in the race. I think they made their they made their school proud. And so it was time for this new batch of students who was going to participate in that same race, this time at the Formula One circuit in Sepang. And so my team then said, boss, why don't we pilot our device on one of those race cars, right? Let's sponsor the Monash team with the
Mm.
telematics device, and they basically needed something as well. And so that was how it started. We found an area to collaborate. A startup, a very small startup like us, with a major university like Monash. So we actually took the first step in order to say, look, can we do something here? And I saw that as a great opportunity for my guys to give back to their alma mater, but also for us to forge a new partnership with a local university, right? Uh, because the work that we do in Asia Mobility and with many other deep tech startups is that we are generating value. It's value creation. We have got to invest in building the technology, and in fact, that is what these research houses and those in the university and academia do, right? It's being able to value create, right? And so there is obviously a lot of synergies that we can look at, but we don't have a model to follow, right? I don't have a model to follow. So I don't know of any other startup who is small enough or at our stage as a reference point that I say, look, I will partner with this big university, right? So we had to take baby steps to work that out. And so one thing led to another. After we did that, then we realized we could work very well with the team. And then thankfully, the university lecturer, Dr. Joanne, and she is one of the key success factors here. She saw the value of being able to partner with us on a longer term basis, not just one race, right? And so she teaches IoT, and they were in the process of setting up an IoT course in the university, and we are an IoT company as well. We've got an IoT in the company. And so that is when we said, look, we know some things now, but some other things that we like to do in our roadmap requires further research and development, further R&D. And that's really the domain of the university, right? Even though startups also do that and corporates do that as well. But you need a lot of manpower, resource, time, effort in order to devote time to R&D. And the risk with R&D is that it may not ever get commercialized. You may end up with nothing, or you may actually end up with something that actually didn't quite work, and you need to repeat that process in a different way, right? So I knew that I had to find an R&D partner, a credible R&D partner who can walk alongside us, right? And that was when we basically crafted this whole joint R&D agreement and collaboration between Asia Mobility and Monash University, whereby Dr. Joanne's brightest student who is being sponsored to do PhD. So this student now is engrafted into my team, joins our team. While he's pursuing his PhD, we actually help to support a bit of a stipend there for the student and for the whole duration of the 3 years of study. But in return of that, he now functions in my team. He's my IoT research engineer, and we get to collaborate together. And that joint collaboration becomes the basis of his thesis. So you see, it's a win-win, right? So it helps the student, because now the student is not just basically doing research in the confines of a lab or his classroom. He's doing research in the confines out there in the marketplace with us, being able to identify the actual commercial requirements and the commercial needs, right? And being able to have a clear roadmap. Okay, this research has got a good chance of success to be commercialized by us, right? They have got a commercial partner there, right? And so that is where the specific research then we had to craft. And so what we're working on there, which I can share, is the fact that with regards to parking systems. So you see, parking is part of the mobility experience for all of us, right? So which is why we are not just public transport. It's mobility. And as far as mobility is concerned, there's public transport, there's private transport. And with private transport, it's you driving yourself in your car, right? And when you drive, you need to find places to park. And that's a key consideration of driving. That's a key challenge of driving in KL, where to park, right? And so we saw that there are solutions coming up for private parking spaces, like shopping malls and those privately runs car park spaces in terms of good payment systems, being able to find my way around the car park, being able to know how many car park bays are available and taken up. So we see that we see that there's some work being done there, and the solutions will come up in that space. But then we realize the public parking spaces, though, not much sort of an innovation is happening there, and we realize that a big gap would exist. Now there's a lot of ways to pay for public car park spaces. If you're going to park, say, in the town council, there's a whole bunch of apps, not just one app. You can use the Touch and Go app, you can use many other apps to pay for a public car park, right? But to find a spot, there's still no solution yet. To find a spot, right? In which area of USJ Taipan, for example, I should be going, because there's a few car park spots available there, right? How do we wayfind people in a public space? right? And so we are actually working on a technology just to do that. And that is the basis of our collaboration with Monash University. We are 1 year into that research. We've got about 2 more years, but I think we'll be able to commercialize before that. And this is the use of IoT and sensors in public spaces, so that we'll be able to map out the car park base in a public space and be able to channel that information to those who are finding for car park, and help you wayfind on a mapping application where to find a public car park bay.
Fantastic. Again, I'm going to pretend that I know what are all these things, but it's terms here that such as M-wave radar and LiDAR technologies. These are obviously things that you guys are working on. It's such a buzzword these days, right? Obviously helped by by the rise of K-dramas like startups, right? They also have the autonomous vehicle and stuff like that. I guess two questions there. One, are you all looking to do that as well? Autonomous driving and whatnot. And secondly, all these buzzwords that are being drummed up by K-dramas, right? Do you really think it's going to push youths towards finding out more and getting more interested in this? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the first question is that we are not getting into the space of providing the technology for self-driving vehicles. That's a very crowded space. It requires a lot of capital. The bigger guys are doing it because it's a multidisciplinary effort. The big companies are all doing that. The Googles of the world, the Amazons of the world, the Apples of the world, and many others as well, is in the AV space. So we are not getting into that space, but what we will do is to be able to provide a platform in order to, being able to supply data to these cars, like for example, parking, right? Our system, our platform will be able to complement a self-driving vehicle network, and also to gather data from these vehicles in order to feed that into a smart city platform. It's a data play for us there. It's not so much of a hardware play as far as the self-driving vehicles are concerned. We definitely see that as the future as well. They'll be part of a mobility ecosystem, not just self-driving passenger vehicles, but self-driving public transport vehicles, buses as well, self-driving buses. We will see that self-driving shuttle vehicles that will come. But you see, all of these self-driving vehicles need to know where to go, right? And for public transport, it's the same thing as well. How do you navigate them? How do you ensure that a person can book a seat on a self-driving bus when there's no driver? How do they pay for the ride, right? So you need some core underlying tech, no matter whether it's human driven bus or a self-driven bus. Some core common tech stacks needs to be in place, and so that can benefit as many self-driving fleets as possible, right? And to be able to also help to orchestrate that in a city. You think of this, years to come when we have many more self-driving vehicles. It's not going to happen immediately, obviously, but in our lifetime we'll be able to see it, right? Whether we'll be able to see all cars turning to self-driving or not, I'm not sure, but we'll be able to see some level of self-driving on our road soon. And what will happen then is that let's paint out this picture, right, where our cities are filled with self-driving cars. All of them are self-driving. There are no human drivers anymore. And then you may say, okay, look, these cars could be roaming freely without a passenger, waiting to pick up the owner once he's done with his meeting, because he doesn't want to pay parking charges, right? So they say, look, I don't need parking. I just send my car moving around. Basically, and they are not even burning fuel. It's battery powered, right? So you can't tell me, this is going to be of a air pollution or anything like that. These are how
Yeah.
these are the new problems that will come. And so from a smart city point of view, the city actually needs to set in place certain regulations, certain restrictions, certain controls over the fact that you can't have self-roaming cars on the road. It's going to create another problem. The roads are going to be congested. The parking spaces are going to be empty, right? You're going to think ahead of that. What is the data platform in order for the city to police, the city to monitor, the city to automate and orchestrate movements, right? The worst thing that you will want to do is you've got a self-driving car and you're stuck in traffic. right? It's not really solving the problem. Self-driving cars should be orchestrated in a way, and you don't need to own one. You must be able to call for one without having to own one, right?
Mm,
And you need the data platform. The city needs a data platform in order to do all of that, right? And so that's where we playing a role. You may not find our tech in the vehicle, but you will find our tech on the cloud. So I hope that answers the first question. The second question about buzzwords, I think buzzwords are great for those who is trying to explain the technology because it's a very
mm,
easy way to just label it. But the downside of a buzzword is that it can be used so flippantly and freely, right?
mm,
Use it without even knowing what it means and just use that as a sticker. And
mm,
it adds to a confusion, right? And so, for example, I think I mean, IoT is a big buzzword for some people. They don't really know what it means, just use it for anything. That's one example. But I think the buzzwords should actually, kindle some kind of a curiosity in people, like, oh, that's something new. I've not heard of that.
yeah,
What is, right? So I hope the youths and the younger people would not be label driven or buzzword driven, but rather to find the meaning behind the buzzword. But I
mm,
feel this, should, I mean, it can only be a buzzword if you don't understand what it means. If you understand what it means, it's no longer a buzzword. And so with the understanding, I think they'll be able to really dig, deeper into it, and being able to study that a bit more. What is LiDAR? What is wave? How it's being used? How does it fit into 5G? So these are all buzzwords, right? But if
mm,
5G is only a buzzword, then we are not actually a value creation society. We are just,
right,
consumers. We're just going to consume something because this guy has got a new product with a new buzzword on it. I want it, right? So like the new 5G iPhones, right? If you don't understand what 5G is and how would 5G benefit you, right? Then you're just buying the phone, just based on a buzzword, right? And
right,
spending money there when in fact there's no use cases for 5G yet, right? But yet there's
yeah.
5G phones, right? And so I do hope that the buzzwords would be a pathway to understanding instead.
Fantastic. And I hope our listeners there who are youths really caught on to what Ram was telling us. Now I guess my next question would be: is Malaysia open to technopreneurs? Now, I know you along the way earlier in the conversation have mentioned about the challenges. In fact, before the show, we talked about funding and stuff like that. I guess is there enough government initiative to push youths towards thinking of this as a proper career path? I mean, it is exciting, but clearly a lot of people also do not know the flip side to it. I guess they always think the grass is always greener on the other end, right? How can we perhaps just pull them back to reality a little bit, and coming from someone and experience as you, perhaps you can share a little bit more.
Yeah, I think Malaysia has come a long way towards supporting startups and technopreneurs and the digital businesses. From the early days of the 2000 era, where this whole idea of startups and VCs and the digital market, we have come a long way in the last 20 years. And in so doing, we have also played catch up along the way. We have not really figured out strategically what does Malaysia lack from a startup point of view, and the psyche of our people. Right? It's not simply trying to copy what's being done in the Silicon Valley. Right? That's an infra copy. You can copy infra, but the software, i.e., the people, right? You can't copy that. You need to really suit it and tailor make it for Malaysians. And that's really understanding as a startup Malaysian owner, as an entrepreneur in Malaysia. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? We actually carry certain cultural baggage. We actually carry certain upbringing baggage, certain of a nature baggage, right?
Hmm.
The nature baggage and the nurture baggage is there for all of us, right? And so being able to look at that and being able to say, okay, look, this may not be something that they're asking for, but actually Malaysians struggle in this space. Like, for example, let's take one key trait of a successful entrepreneur, is being being willing to take risk. Are we risk takers or not as Malaysians? Stuff like that, right? Are we risk takers or are we risk averse as a society? I think we are very much risk averse. We try to find the safest way possible, right? But at the same time, also, if we see that the benefit clearly outweighs the risk, we will take the risk, right? So we are not a completely risk averse society. We will take some risk, but I have to know clearly that I'm not alone now. I'm not the only one going to take the plunge. I've got a few friends with me. We're all going to take the plunge together, right? Then we see more people, more of the Malaysians being able to do that. And risk taking is a key trait of a successful entrepreneur. And if you're not, willing to take risk, then then the reward on the other end is not going to be as lucrative and as big, right? In the same way, let's use Grab for example, and that is where I feel that we are not learning enough from each other. The Grab experience should have taught us a lot about what has failed in Malaysia, where it all went wrong, where this huge Malaysian founded business were lost to Singapore, right? Where did we fail? At what layer? It's not just about the government failure, but also the industry, the ecosystem, right? How can we make ourselves do to repeat that same mistake? I don't want to see it Grab again, right? Not from a point of view of another big sort of a startup, but being able to lose that to a neighboring country. We need to keep our startups here, but have a startup with a global reach, right? Have a startup with an Asian reach. And so that is where I think we need to push the boundaries a bit, but that can only come with an introspection. It's easy to say, look, we need the government support, we need funding, everybody needs that. That is not very specifically Malaysian tailored, right? So what I mean by, we can solve those kinds of problems easily. Just look at what has worked elsewhere and not repeat the same mistake. But what we can't do very easily is to look at what are the Malaysian specific problems here that we need to address as a nation with our young people, but not just young people, midlife people who are going to start businesses. More and more startups are being led by people like me, who's not actually very, very young and fresh out of school, right? And we carry a lot more baggage than the young guy. And so being able to deal with that, right? And being able to be very strategic with that, from a programming point of view, from an education point of view, from a promotion point of view, the government agencies from a policy point of view as well. How can we actually not just help young people take the leap, but how can we also help midlife people take the leap? Because there are an amazing generation of people with fantastic ideas and true blue Malaysians who want to do a lot more. But they feel that they've got too much to care for. They've got a family to feed. They've got all of those dependencies that makes it really hard for them to take a plunge, right? How can we make it easier? How can we co-create? How can we help some of them work with each other in consortium? Because sometimes you can spread the risk, right? So rather than the risk being on just one person, how can we help like-minded Malaysians come together, work on an idea together, and co-create something together with maybe a little bit of an input from the government, a little bit from a matching grant, a little bit from a VC, right? So we've got to think outside the box in that way. And have a win-win kind of thing, whereby we need to reward collaboration and not just the winner. That's a very significant mindset change, right? We have always been a winner-take-all society, right? The strongest politician becomes the prime minister is one guy, right? Among everybody, one guy becomes the prime minister. It's a winner-take-all. There'll be one big party, then only we are stable. Or there should be one big business in this market, then only, that's a strong business, we can trust that business, right? Only when Grab, became big, only then we thought ride-hailing is good. The government said ride-hailing was bad because it's competing with taxi guys. But once Grab ride-hailing is good, we will support ride-hailing, right? So it's a winner-take-all. This guy has to be big enough before he can, convince everybody else that this is the right way to go. But that's a wrong approach. We need to start rewarding collaboration, efforts, initiative, right? We need to make sure that the guy who was third place, fourth place, fifth place, but because he took the plunge, he made some risk, he created something. He may not have been the big top dog here, but there's something that he has done along the way that has got value, right? Can we reward that in some way and to inspire him to do more of that, right? So I think that is what we need as a country moving forward.
Lovely. And as we were talking, there was another question that came in. I think I will ask this first because once I move on to the next segment. Now, is Asia Mobility looking to expand smart technology services into other parts of Malaysia? It says here bracket smaller cities or towns as well for the future. And is there any challenges you foresee working in those areas?
Yes, absolutely. The answer to that is 100% yes. Mobility problems is not just in our larger cities like KL or JB or Penang. We feel that with a scalable data platform, everybody can benefit. That is really our mission for all Malaysians to benefit from this. Those who live in the smaller towns like Raub or Taiping or Mersing or Selamat, or Batu Pahat for that matter, they've got public transport systems there, right? And they may not have the traffic problems, but they may have other problems. But with the simplifying of the technology, we see the value here in terms of if I've got a data, once we've got the benefit of a data platform, a tech platform for that, many other people can start providing public transportation services, right? So the whole idea is that why wait for Rapid KL to come and run a bus in your town? If you are living in, you say you are living in Batu Pahat, and you say, look, actually, the people here need a shuttle service. There's a big demand for that, to take them to the market in the morning and to pick up their kids from school in the morning, right? To send up their kids to school in the morning. That's a local neighborhood shuttle service, right? But now for you to do that, there is no tech. You can't plug it into a platform. You need to do all the marketing. You need to be able to, and it's a very old school way of running it. But if you've got a platform, if there is a common app for all neighborhood shuttle services, for example, right? All you need to do now is just get your van, get two vans, you run it for Batu Pahat. It serves, very specific clientele. You don't need to compete with Rapid KL. You serve where the needs are, right? The where the needs are that are not currently being served, right? So we see the value of technology being able to inspire the creation of new businesses. So now we are leveling the playing field. We are lowering the cost of entry. So you don't need to come up with, say, I need to have a fleet of 10 big buses before I get into the transportation service business, right? Because the tech has been taken care of. You can reach the passengers already. You don't have to worry about that. The passengers can find you. And so we see the value of the technology across the board. So this is not just the technology for the rich or the technology for those who are in the large urban centers. It's for
urban centers.
For everybody.
Fantastic. Eugene, I hope that answers your question. Now, moving on very quickly, you're also involved in other, tech startups and initiatives, Regoff Technologies, for example, Cycle State, which is a esports total holistic solutions provider, and even Sri KDU. Can you quickly walk us through that? And especially on the part of Sri KDU where you are serving in the tech advisory panel, it is a digital leadership program. I think it's a game changer in town in terms of digital skills, talent development, and education. So run us through all these couple of things.
Sure. My primary focus or the business that I run is the one that I run here in Asia Mobility, but I've had the good fortune of being able to partner with like-minded friends, start up other businesses which they run, right? So Cycle State is one of those, and that's an esports agency. And I'm a founding partner. I don't really run the business, but I give my insights, my advice, and I've got my finger on the pulse, but I don't run the business there. But that came about simply because me and a few of my partners there were very passionate about being able to do what we can in our space for the development of grassroots esports, talent. And so there's a very focused, specific niche. It's not something that come about because I am in. So I don't treat that. I mean, it's not an investment company for me. It's something that I've built with my partners, right? So I've created it. And with Regoff Tech as well, very similar. I co-founded the business with Datuk Paul Koo, which is a dear friend of mine, and both of us felt very strongly about using the power of blockchain and AI in order to revolutionize the banking systems and the finance systems. So that's very back-end systems. And so you don't hear much about that because we are not a front-end facing or a B2C kind of. We had a B2B kind of business there, and we saw the power of blockchain also from a regulatory tech point of view, from a gov tech point of view as well. And so that's really harnessing the technology for good, right? So there were these few opportunities that came about. So I would say that I had this fertile season for about 2 years or so, where a lot of these new ideas were spawned. But it's not me trying to be a Superman and running everything. I run one thing, and then everything else, I've got a little bit of stake in it, and I help to plant that, and then they grow it, right? And with with 3KDU as well, I've just been appointed to the tech advisory panel earlier this year. This is the 3KDU school in Klang. So this is the new school, the brand new school, and it's a Microsoft flagship school. It's the first school in Asia for digital leadership, and so I had the opportunity to interact with the owners and the CEO of the group that runs 3KDU, Dr. Goh Chi Leong, and I have been talking to him, and he's a friend of mine as well, but he came to me from a tech point of view. He says, look, I've got this school, and can you come and help me to advise and find the right people and pull the people in, and how we can structure this. So it was a result of conversations that took place over a period of time that culminated in him saying the value of partnering with startups. And so that is what I really like about the school. The school actually, by this tech advisory panel and their digital initiatives, what they're doing is like an incubator strategy. So that school becomes a tech incubator, right? That's never been done before, right? Consciously, from year one right up to when you graduate in year 10 or 11 or 12, right? You will be coming out of a tech incubator, not knowingly, but there will be very specific, concerted, conscious efforts being done in the school for the students. So we are going down to a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old, right? So that is what has really excited me to say yes to that, simply because this gives me a chance to reshape the Malaysian psyche. Where we talked about the baggages that we carry, we can't start. We can start when the person is 21, 22, 23, but then you've got to do a lot more work, and you've got to uncover a lot more baggage. But if you start them right at the age of 5, 6, right? We put into them the right skill set, strategies, and mindset for technology development and business, right? By the time they're out of school, these guys have got it, and they have got skills that will create the next big unicorn that will be able to put the world map, right? So it's a leapfrog strategy, which I like, that it's being ahead of the curve, right? And that's what I like. And so I'm just doing as much as I can, as much as they want me to, for me to play my small little part in the next uprising generation.
Can you ask them if they are opening up a branch in Segambut? Because Klang is just too far for me. Well, fantastic. There was recently there's some good news. Obviously there's always good news for Asian mobility, but Secure Freight was something that you guys were able to launch and showed capabilities in your suite of solutions. But perhaps just tell us what is this Secure Freight all about?
Yeah, sure. That's our latest IoT-backed solution for the logistics and the freight sector. Because as you see, mobility isn't just about the movement of people; it's the movement of goods as well. And movement of goods is a huge part of our daily lives now, right? Now that we are all in a pandemic, everything, from food to everything else, is being sent to our doorstep. And so that's not going to go away. Obviously, the pandemic has really created a surge in those sectors. But specifically for the logistics and freight companies that are part of the supply chain, right? What we have done is that we have partnered with a company in Singapore that produces these, digital padlocks. We have integrated in a very unique way. We are the first ones to do this. The use of a digital padlock with our telematics devices. And so what it does is that it solves the problem of tampering in transit. This is so for high value goods. This is so for some goods that whereby there's a bulk volume, and it goes through a longer freight journey. And typically in trucks like that, they will have a key-based padlock, a padlock with a key, right? And the guy who holds the key is the driver. But that's not his goods. He's transporting the goods on behalf of somebody else. And typically we find that clients that these freight company is serving, would like to ensure that there's security in transit while the truck is moving from point to point. How are you ensuring that there's no pilferage, and there's no tampering of my goods, because those are my goods, right? Your job is just to move them. And so we saw the opportunity to digitalize that. And so we are the first ones in the world to do this, to combine telematics capabilities to a digital padlock, because the digital padlock by itself does not know where the padlock is. No location aware capabilities. But with the use of our telematics device on a truck and with the padlock on the back of the truck, now there's no key to the driver anymore, because it's pin code based, it's keyless, right? So what we do on our IoT platform is that we geofence the destination of the truck. So the moment the truck arrives where it needs to arrive, a pin code is sent to a chat app that belongs to the driver. So the driver gets a pin code on his phone, and that's his key, right? It's a 6-digit pin code. He uses that pin code to basically unlock the padlock, and that gives the confidence to their client, that they have got a digital security system with a log as well, who has opened the log, who has unlocked the log, how many times a pin code were generated, right? So that's really being able to use the power of our platform and being able to find points of integration with another provider. And so 2 plus 2 equals 5 lah. So this is a classic case of 2 plus 2 equals 5. The digital platform you can use on your own, but it's got no location aware capabilities. I can then do a lot more if I were to combine this. So that's some of the work that we have done, and we launched that in the midst of the pandemic, in a lockdown, right? So I'm quite proud of my team for that. But so yeah, we have got a few more solutions in the pipeline, and that's really harnessing the power of IoT. IoT needs to serve, it's a means to an end. It's not the end, right? So the buzzwords are a means to an end. It's not the end. So you're harnessing the power of the technology to provide very, very key and unique solutions that's going to solve the day-to-day problems that is in our society today.
And with that, Ram, parting thoughts for youths, and in fact, like what you say, those who are in their midlife, like us, who perhaps wants to upskill or reskill in a way, or chart a different career path in the midst of the pandemic now. What would you say to them, or what's one key advice, I suppose?
I think for midlife entrepreneurs, the challenge is different from, say, a young person fresh out of school. Both have got their own sets of challenges. One has got lack of experience. The other one has got enough experience to know what may work, what may not work. So I think one of the key things is to leverage of our strengths, not of our weaknesses. A midlife entrepreneur obviously has been around the neck of the woods a few times, and so the other strength that a midlife person would have, he or she, is that a wealth of network, right? You've got friends, you've got contacts and associates, which a younger person would not necessarily have, right? And to be able to leverage upon that in a positive way, so that you can rely on the safety of the counsel of many, right? That is what I think we have got. The benefit of our generation is that we have got friends from our high school days or from our primary days that has been with us along the journey, and I've got a few of those friends myself, and so I really go basically fall back on that, and the value of those friendships, the value of the relationships and the context that we have is a key part of being able to be that safety net around us, right? So that is what I think we can draw from, and then also surround ourselves, and don't and once it's time to build your team and to get a team going, don't hire people like ourselves, right? We surround ourselves with counsel and friends and partners who are like ourselves, but don't hire people like you. You need to hire people who are unlike you. Hire younger people, right? And that's what I love to do. I will look for,
Absolutely, I agree.
right? Yeah,
Hire people who know more than you, actually.
yeah, absolutely. More than you, right? Don't go and look for another replica of yourself, because that's not going to help you. It's not going to help the team. And so that is what I would say to any midlife entrepreneur. Obviously, there's many more things, and many more things that each of us can bring to the plate. But that's what has worked for me, and I use that as my guiding light.
Fantastic. And with that, Ram, I would like to say a big thank you again on behalf of the team of Rejuvenate Edition 2. It has been lovely talking to you for close to about an hour now. And you've dropped some really amazing gems. And if anyone who has caught this session midway through, or you've only caught the last 5 minutes, not to worry. You will be able to rewatch the session again in a short while more over at rejuvenatemind.com. Once again, Ram, thank you so much. I do hope you stay safe and stay well, and I wish the team all the best for all the upcoming collaborations. I can't wait to hear about them in the coming weeks or months, and truly I wish you the best. What Asia Mobility is trying to do here in Malaysia is really, as you put it, you guys are first movers. It's game changing and it's revolutionary, and I hope a lot of young startups or youths who are starting on this technopreneurship journey will, in fact, even entrepreneurs for that matter, right? Take a lot of heart from what Asia Mobility has done and built in this very, very short time. And with that, Ram, thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed talking to you.
Okay, take care. Stay safe.